Hi, and welcome to the Stock Scores Market Minutes for June 19th, 2017. This week, my topic is prioritize your trades. Then I'll do my market analysis. And finally, the trade of the week on PI. Well, not every trade opportunity is created equal. I'm often faced with the conundrum, how do I prioritize the trades, particularly when I'm day trading and I have to think quickly and focus in on the best opportunities. And to do that, I created a list of the characteristics that I look for, the different aspects of my setups, and I rank them. And so I can then, when considering a trade, look at those that have the factors that have the highest ranking in my criteria. Now, you can factor based on the rules. So in other words, if one of your rules is trade stocks that are trading abnormally, and that's the number one rule, then focus in on the stocks that are trading abnormally. But sometimes you can also prioritize your trades based on things that are unique to your situation. So, for example, many traders have a limited amount of capital, and so they may prioritize based on the price of the stock, based on the past volatility of the stock, because they want to get the most bang for their dollar, given that they don't have enough capital to take every opportunity. So you can prioritize on different aspects, but it's important to remember that you don't have to try to be perfect. You're just focusing on the factors that can make you a better trader. Trying to be a perfect trader isn't going to happen. So work at just being the best you can be. All right, let's get into this week's market analysis. And the S&P 500 has been going sideways for the last couple of weeks. And so it's been, I would say, a difficult trading environment. There hasn't been a lot of volatility, days like this, where you just get sort of this choppy sideways trading. And in general, we're going sideways, so there's not good follow through on trades. I would say that the buyers and sellers just don't know what to do next. But what is happening is we're starting to see little bits of breakdown. There's a slight falling top there. Today, we broke down through this little bit of support. The upward trend line was broken there. So there's some early signs that the sellers are getting motivated. I don't think it's a strong signal to jump out of the market yet, but in the short term, I think the market is more likely to go lower than higher. And so I advise some caution as you go into next week. Now, in the longer term picture, we're still in a nice long-term upward trend, but notice the very low volatility here. And we are, of course, near the top of the channel, not quite at it, but that often comes before a little bit of a pullback too. So I wouldn't be long-term bearish until we break this upward trend line that I've drawn here. But in the short term, I do think that there is good potential for some weakness. And so be cautious in the short term. If you're a longer-term holder, there's still no reason to exit the market. On the Russell 2000, it's been in a sideways pattern, but not for 2 weeks, but instead for 6 months. And that has been a real grind in this market. That's why you don't see a lot of low price stocks giving good trading opportunities. The money is in the large cap, the Facebooks, the Apples, the Netflix, those kind of stocks. That's where the money has been flowing. But we're starting to also see that the money's coming out of those stocks. Perhaps it comes back to the small caps. Don't see it yet. We started to see a little bit of strength last week. We talked about that last week. But until we get a real concerted break to the upside here, I wouldn't get too optimistic. Now, the good thing is that we do have rising bottoms building here, and we're working at breaking out through that resistance. So this is an ascending triangle pattern. If we can get a strong breakout day, then I think that this market will go higher. On to the Canadian market, and it broke down through support on the short-term chart this week. See that there? Came back a little bit on Friday, but I think it rolls over and is more likely to go lower than higher. So I am bearish short-term on the Canadian market. But then we also see the longer-term chart, and you see that the upward trend line was broken and we've built a falling top. And this week we are starting to tickle through that support. Not a decisive breakdown yet, but certainly somewhat negative. And I think that Canadian market more likely to head lower than higher in the near term, perhaps down into there. And we'll see why in a moment. On the TSX Venture, falling tops and a little bit of accelerated selling this week. We are in that downward sloping channel. Something like that. I never draw these things great, but if you had a ruler, you'd draw it really well. Anyways, I do think that there's a little more downside until you get into the next falling bottom. But anyway, I would be quite cautious with the small cap Canadian stocks. On to the Treasury bond market. Of course, we had the downward trend, broke that, built a rising bottom, now breaking up from a rising bottom. It looks to me like the bond market wants to go higher, which means interest rates go lower. And yeah, I would watch for that. If you're looking to get a mortgage, I wait a bit because it looks like interest rates will come down. On to the US dollar, and you can see that it's been edging its way lower, mostly because of strength in the euro. We're in a downward sloping channel, kind of at the bottom of the channel. So I think it just kind of gyrates here. If it can break the downward trend line, bullish. If it sort of goes through there, we're going to get an acceleration to the downside. But we do have pretty good support in there. Not far from that yet, but I do think that we're more likely to go lower than higher on the US dollar. Now on to gold. It hit this resistance level, got stuck. We do have rising bottoms. So I do think gold has the potential to break out. Maybe it's in 2 weeks, maybe it's in 3 months, I don't know. But it is building some optimism. So we do have the potential for gold to start to make a move to the upside, but it's not there yet. If we do get a bit of a correction in the market, that may be a catalyst for gold to move up and ultimately break through that little bit of resistance. Of course, the long-term downward trend line, which I show when I look at a weekly chart, is something like that. So we actually broke the downward trend line, but we just haven't made a strong break of it yet. So watch for that. Now, this is the main reason I think the Canadian market is running into some trouble, and that is oil prices. This is a weekly chart, and you can see that we've been building falling tops in what looks to be a narrow pattern. When you look at it on a daily scale, you see that it's had actually some volatility on the short-term chart. But this week we broke down through support that is held up for quite some time, going back all this distance here. So that is a breakdown of support, and that means we have a good chance that we're going to test those lows from last year, 2016. And I would not want to be an owner of oil stocks right now. Of course, they're heavily weighted in the Canadian market. And you also have the fact that things like the banking industry and so many other industries in Canada revolve around the oil industry, or are certainly affected by it. And that is another reason why we could see some more weakness in the Canadian market. Now, on the fear side, we have no fear, which to me is a bit of a concern, because when you see the market kind of rolling over and starting to break some short-term support levels, and there's real complacency in the market, the VIX is at a real low here, I think we could see the market get a little bit surprised and a lot of people run for the exit door at once. So this is all stuff that's things to think about. We're not really getting strong signals of it yet, but I'm starting to, there's a little bit of a tremor in the market that could turn into something worse. So keep an eye out for that. So long-term, still bullish on US stocks. Short-term, I've dropped it down to neutral. That could go bearish if we get a little more weakness. Canadian stocks bearish in both time frames, and I've just downgraded to bearish on the longer-term time frame. Gold still neutral on both. It is trying to break that long-term downward trend, and it could happen, but I don't think it's going to happen in a week. It might take a few weeks. Oil, bearish on both time frames now, breaking through some support this week. We were bearish short-term, but still long-term neutral, but I'm going to lower it to long-term bearish now that that support has been broken. There are some early signs that the sellers are getting motivated to act as falling tops are building in the short term. While the upward trend for U.S. stocks are intact still, investors should increase or should invest and basically increase their caution as they approach the market. Canadian stocks are breaking their upward trend, and the gold is stuck at that downward trend line, oil breaking support, and fear is still relatively low, and I could argue maybe complacency is high. All right, let's look at the trade of the week. This is a stock I traded on Friday, day trade. It gets on my list because it was trading abnormal volume, and then I just wait for the pattern break using my message candle indicator, this white dots that you see all over the place. Those are my message candles. The pink dots show that there was that abnormal price and volume coming in. These are indicators I make available to my active trader students. You can get information about that on the StockScores website. Long and the short of it is, bought it here. Took maybe 10 minutes before it started to move, but it did a nice little rally into the close, earning about 4-to-1 risk reward, a little better than 4-to-1. So nice little day trade on what would normally be a quiet Friday afternoon. Made me happy. All right, well, I hope you've enjoyed the Market Minutes this week. Click on that subscribe button if you have not already, and like the video if you like it. Have a great week in the market, and trade well.